Welcome to the Convocation interview series, hosted by Berea College and produced by Apollon, the undergraduate e-journal. Apollon's mission is to publish superior examples of undergraduate humanities research, as well as fully utilize the e-journal format through image, text, and sound. In the spirit of this mission, the Convocation interview series provides Berea College students the opportunity to engage in conversation with a diverse calendar of speakers and performers. The expertise of these speakers and performers provides a valuable resource, as well as the opportunity to connect the role of the public intellectual to the college environment.
My name is Ariel Owens. I am a business administration major with a concentration in accounting and finance, and I am from Oahu, Hawaii.
My name is Candace Mullins. I'm a business major with a marketing concentration. I'm from Danville, Kentucky.
Hi, I'm Cody Monholland, and my major is physical education, and I'm from Ohio.
Entrepreneurship in the public good programs, that's something I'm really interested in. I'm just wondering where you think that it fits into social entrepreneurship. How important do you think that it is?
I think it's absolutely critical, and one of our pivots over the last couple of years has actually been to spend more resources on social media. So, when you're a young nonprofit, you have to really husband your resources. You have to really prioritize your time and your money. And you don't have a lot of margin for error because you have to build some traction and get some results and build your base quickly. And if you don't do that, the money is going to run out. So we actually had a discussion about do we hire a development director or do we hire a marketing communications person with a focus on social media? We decided to hire a social media person because getting your message out is just so critical. And if you think you have a good idea, an idea that needs to be disseminated, an idea that will get you support, there's no better way to do that than through social media. I think that so much of social entrepreneurship is convincing people to think differently about a problem or issue or behave differently. And social media is just such an unbelievably effective way of communicating to people and connecting people cheaply and efficiently, and getting our ideas out into the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, I think people, once you get to a certain stage, people will fund results. But in order to get results, you have to invest an enormous amount in your program. And so you have to reach the people who fund ideas. And social media is a way of reaching your customer much more effectively than any other technology. So that there's going to be a lot of new startup nonprofits that are going to grow very quickly because of their smart use of social media. And the ones that can't adapt quickly are going to find themselves at a big disadvantage.
You mentioned that you need to find people who can fund your ideas. Can you list at least maybe 2 strategic allies aside from microfinancing opportunities and philanthropic organizations that can help in social entrepreneurship for communities?
Well, I think that there's all kinds of different actors that can get involved. And I think actually figuring out how to get non-traditional actors involved is a huge growth opportunity. One of the things that social media has done is it has enabled people to bring like-minded people together and to actually say, hey, we care about this. And we didn't know we cared about it because we didn't think about it in that way. But now that we think about it in that way, we can care about it together and we can partner together. So for us, some groups that we're working with now is actually college students. So we have college students who are helping us to help companies that we work with to measure their social impact and to think about how to measure their impact. Because just thinking, how do I measure my impact is a difficult, tricky question. And how do I do that without having to spend a ton of time? Because I'm an entrepreneur, I have no time. So I think that there are all kinds of ways to actually insert students into real-world problem-solving opportunities. And I actually just did a blog post on this after the Ashoka U conference, which is all about how I think that was a great conference, and how universities can be really creative. And the same is true with lawyers, with volunteers. There's just so many ways to. There's I think there's a TED talk about this. There's 1 trillion hours of kind of free labor that's just up for grabs for 1 trillion hours a year of labor that people are willing to provide to support causes they care about, if they have a way to do that. And so there's just a lot of excess labor that is kind of in front of the television set when it could be doing something really meaningful that it cares about. So actually I think your two questions actually kind of complement each other really well.
So kind of building off the students, and basically my question is, what are the skills and qualities that a student needs to be an effective entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think passion, passion for the business is huge. I mean, attitude is actually so important, because you have to be able to get slapped down and bounce right back up again. So you have to have resilience. Resilience comes from having a focus, having passion, having a sense of self-agency, that you really believe that you can make a difference. And it also comes from being able to have a group of friends, supporters, mentors that care about you and that are there to help you to grow. And I also think that an important trait is empathy. So you have to be able, I think, to see yourself in someone else's shoes and see how ultimately we all are kind of interconnected and in the same boat. And if you can see that, then all kinds of new opportunities are going to come to you, and you're going to be able to get all kinds of new partners and allies that you might not get before. So those are some. I mean, there's a lot of particular skill sets that anybody needs to kind of be successful in business. Teamwork, creativity, these kinds of things, and they're all important for sure. But I think having focus, knowing yourself, and knowing that you're ready to kind of go the distance. And I'll just give you an anecdote. When I was in business school, I was in something called the entrepreneurial greenhouse. And this was for entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own businesses right out of business school. And you could divide people kind of into two groups. The people who had a plan B and the people who had no plan B. And not surprisingly, the people who had a plan B almost invariably ended up doing their plan B, because they were just not committed. I mean, if you have a plan B, it means if things get tough, you're going to go to your plan B. So I like entrepreneurs who don't have a plan B. I mean, their plan B is they fail and then they start again, and it's okay to fail, and you have to learn to be okay, with failure. And it took me a while before I was sort of comfortable that if this whole thing just crashed and burned, that it would be okay. Like, I would survive. It wouldn't be this horrible Greek tragedy. I would actually have learned a ton in the process. And when you convince yourself of that, because you don't really care so much what other people think, and it's about yourself and your own development, it's incredibly empowering, and it gives you kind of permission to really focus on trying to be successful and put yourself out there, and not be afraid of rejection, which I think is kind of key if you're an entrepreneur.
I have another question. So if you are, say, a partner to someone who has a great idea, who wants to do something in social entrepreneurship, whether it be a business or a nonprofit, how do you help them take an idea into something that they can see that they can mold it, and it's not just this one idea that has to stay the same, and that they feel like if they put it out, and it fails, that they can't do it again? How do you let them see that there is this sort of climbing process, that you can acquire all these resources and you can build it into something that's bigger than just a small community, and you can reach out to other parts?
Yeah, I think there needs to actually be more case studies and books about that, because actually I think it's a great problem. I mean, it happens a lot, and in our own case, we changed our model kind of completely. We actually changed a little bit our target market, because we were realizing that certain parts of what we did were awesome, and other parts were not efficient, and so they weren't working as well as we wanted them to work. So, a good entrepreneur is very close to the market, right? They know what the market wants, and they have to make sure that their product or service matches what the market wants, or they have to find a different market. And things are changing all the time. I mean, we're undergoing a kind of unparalleled acceleration in technology and change right now. And it is just unbelievable how quickly things are changing. And being able to adapt to that, and being very nimble, and not kind of being too committed in any kind of doctrinaire way to one idea, So for us, there was a problem that we were trying to solve. And I think if you keep in mind what is the problem you're trying to solve, or what is the customer value proposition that you are trying to give them, then you can tweak your idea all you want, because your idea is simply in service of what is the problem you're trying to solve. And the problem that you're trying to solve may also change, it also may change. So understanding the problem really well is probably the most important thing you need to do. And then you will be able to hopefully have the foresight to shift gears when you need to, because people are shifting gears all the time. BlackBerry is trying to shift gears so fast, and it might not be able to do it. And wouldn't it be unbelievable if BlackBerry just went bankrupt because the App Store just killed it, just like that. So change is a constant, and people need to not be beholden to one idea. I mean, the essence of entrepreneurship is being able to very quickly recalibrate.
I have a question. As far as like a social entrepreneur, how do you convince small businesses or local organizations to expand on their social climate? For example, I'm working with economic development for the city of Berea, and we have different organizations who could do a lot more better work for the community if they would come together. But the forefront in their mind is that they're only worried about profit. How do you change them from the profit sense to work together to reach something better in the future versus just focusing on themselves?
Again, I feel like this is a similar question. And we need more case studies. We need more case studies where people have seen how that's happened, so they can kind of see a path for themselves. I think there are examples of people kind of saying, look, if we work together, we're going to all benefit together. And I think that one just quick way of maybe addressing that is to try to show that there isn't necessarily this inherent tension between sort of doing something that's going to help the community and profits. Mm-hmm. Like, I actually think the future of profits will be, if what you're doing is helping the community, you're going to make more money. So I think the businesses need to be thinking, how can what I do really help the community? Because if what I'm doing is helping the community, I'm actually going to build much better trust. I'm going to build a better brand. I'm going to have all these allies who are going to want to help me. And I'm going to be able to grow my business, and I'm going to be more successful. So what we need to be studying is, how do you kind of go from having all these trade-offs to having win-win situations, and training people to be able to find what is that win-win situation. And there's no easy answer, but increasingly, I think, as consumers are becoming much more aware, and as there's much more transparency with information, as social media becomes more important, the reputation of companies as being, reputations for companies as being part of the community and committed to the community, that's going to become more and more important. And so if you can kind of make that case and talk about the importance of brand and reputation, and how we do have to work together. I mean, that's how, society progresses, basically by people working together, by seeing that long-term interest is more important than short-term interest, and being able to see what would Berea look like if everyone kind of were working together and had incentives aligned and had the same kind of goal. What would that look like? How would that help the different respective businesses, and what can they start doing now to get to that point? So I think focusing on long-term goals and ultimate and win-win situations, and what we need is kind of more case studies. In fact, if you guys see a case studies, like, you should write a case study, because I think there needs to be that kind of more of those kind of examples right now.
I kind of want to jump back to what Candace asked earlier, but with adaptation and changing your business model and stuff like that, how does a business or you, for that instance, know when the adaptation needs to take place so that you're not behind the competition?
I guess it's when you look at, you look at your product and you look at your customer and you think, is my product exactly what my customer needs? If you are a for-profit business, your customer might stop buying your product, and that might be the first time you notice it. If you're a really good business, you're talking to your customer. You're listening. I mean, the way to do it is by listening. If you're a nonprofit, you may have certain assets that you that you can deploy, and it might be that your original target market is not the right target market for those assets. So in our case, we were working with lots of very, very small businesses. They were not sophisticated enough to kind of absorb, a team of MBA students. They weren't sophisticated enough to absorb an investor that wants to make an equity investment. So we've kind of moved up the value chain a little bit. We're dealing now with slightly more sophisticated entrepreneurs. They still need a ton of help and support, but they're much better able to actually take what we can offer and turn it into impact. So it's really about listening, and making sure that what you have is what the customer wants and needs.
I just want to know, just because we're undergraduates, and obviously we look up to Dr. Hackbert and other faculty and staff members on campus, but who is your role model as you were, going through business school? Or did you have anyone?
I had a professor named Paul Tierney at Columbia who was kind of a mentor and role model. I mean, he was a great professor. His class was like catalytic for me. It enabled me to recruit a lot of students to help me. But I've never had a sort of real kind of role like mentor. And I think and it's too bad, but I mean, I think it's really important to have mentors, and that's why I actually want to sort of be more of a mentor to people, because I never really had one, and I think oftentimes what a mentor is really is just somebody who kind of gives you some advice, based on experience, just based on having lived and seen a lot more than you have, so that you can kind of get on the right path maybe a little bit faster. And for me, it took me a while to find my path. And then when I did, I was able to really focus. but I think, cultivating those kind of relationships is super important, and maintaining them after you graduate. I mean, so much of life is who you know, and it's not just like, oh, I know some big muckety mucks. It's, I know people who care about me and who give me good advice and are there to support me, and so building up your own kind of support network is key, critical.
What are the big effects that microfinancing opportunities have on small businesses, and should all communities seek to have some type of microfinancing organization in their community?
Well, what do you mean by microfinancing?
I guess I want to say like investors who would be willing to help that entrepreneurial climate for people who want to start a small business for their community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need three kinds of capital for any business to be successful. You need human capital, social capital, and financial capital. So if you might be able to survive with two of the three. You really want to have all three. It's very hard to survive with just one. So almost invariably, one of the ones that you need is financial capital. So some companies in some industries can grow organically. They have customers, and the customers are willing to pay them enough money that they can reinvest in the business and grow it. Some businesses can, if they have a very good business model and they have a good track record, they can go to any bank, and the bank will say, okay, wow, you're doing great. I will invest in you, I'll give you a loan. Many startup businesses don't have that luxury, especially in the developing world. So, you absolutely need to find ways for capital to flow to these small businesses. Most of the early stage investment that is done, let's say in Latin America, is not that different from in the U.S. It's like friends and family. So that's great if your family, has money, but most families have no money. And so it's very difficult if you're not kind of within a big family group. It's very difficult to sort of find investors. And it may even, your biggest enemy may also be yourself, because you also may not trust anybody because you grew up and, in a society where nobody trusted anybody. And so why should you all of a sudden trust someone who might want to steal your company or steal your idea? Big problem of trust. And actually in the US, we're way ahead of much of the rest of the world when it comes to trust, because we actually are a pretty trusting society compared to most. I think, capital is it's the lifeblood of a business. You need capital. And our great challenge is, how do we efficiently allocate capital to businesses in the developing world that can create social impact? How do we do that? And that actually is what we are trying to do on a more micro scale with Agora. But I think you can extend that and say it's a huge problem universally in the entire world. How do you efficiently allocate investment capital to early stage businesses capable of solving social problems? How do you do it? And that is a question for the foundations. How are you supporting the building of that ecosystem so that we can efficiently connect capital with people capable of putting it to work?
What do you think colleges and universities and the government can do to help promote social entrepreneurship?
Well, I think they should join Ashoka U. I think there should be classes on social entrepreneurship. There should be case studies. People should be watching TED Talks. They should be talking about them. People should be cultivating an attitude of problem solving, and an attitude of kind of thinking about the future and imagining what if we did it differently this way. So I think there's a ton. a ton that can be done, and there are organizations that are trying to do that, and they should probably be highlighted and celebrated.